Hey, it's Juck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Hey, welcome to Juck on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me on a Tuesday. And today, in about 45 minutes, I will begin my 2-hour trek down to Columbus to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for this week's Ryan Day press conference, post-Washington, pre-Minnesota. And on Sunday, my chauffeur car arrived. So I tried it out yesterday. It drove me back and forth from work. It was really strange. It was hard to not grab the wheel, hard to not touch the pedals. But it did its job. And I was amazed on the screen. It really shows everything, all the other cars on the road. So we're going to try it out on the first long trip here and see. It's got like just the perfect amount of battery life to get there and back without having to charge it. I hope that's the case. I hope that those are accurate numbers that it says it's got, because I would hate to have to stop and do that. It would totally be worthless to me if I had to stop and spend an hour charging this thing up to add that onto my day. But we'll be heading down there, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more talk about Washington and then maybe a little bit about Minnesota, as PJ Fleck took the podium on Monday to talk about Ohio State. And this is what he wore. This guy, man, the black suit with the black shirt with a couple of one too many buttons unbuttoned. We'll put it that way. He was incredibly complimentary about Ohio State and Jeremiah Smith. I mean, he pretty much went on for about 2 minutes about how great Jeremiah was and everything he was great at, which is pretty much everything you could include in a description of a wide receiver that they could possibly do. He's great at this. He's great at that. It was a really cool thing to hear him say that. But of course, he's setting up the Minnesota fans for what's inevitably going to happen next Saturday, this Saturday at night at the Shoe. And I'm really excited, as this is going to be the first Big Ten game at night since the new festivities have been underway at the stadium. And that's pretty exciting. I was thinking I might head down because we got a pretty weak slate of games. Definitely nothing like this past Saturday. But we do have Miami and Florida State. Now, Florida State just lost to Virginia. Interestingly enough, there will be someone at that Miami-Florida State game. A little bit of a surprise, but Ohio State might have a potential flip-E. That's a bad one. That's a bad flip. That's going out of the class, and that individual going to be at that Florida State-Miami game. We'll talk about him in a moment. I'm just about a quarter of the way through the All-22, so tomorrow we'll have a little bit more to talk about as far as that goes. But I wanted to see Tegra. I wanted to see Tegra's performance because Ethan Onyanwa didn't get a single snap in the game against Washington, which was strange because he is substituted at right guard with Tegra every single game. And then Washington, he hasn't. And it's not like Tegra's been like ramping up his play. So Ethan, who's been continually getting better, didn't get any snaps. And Tegra, just about, I'm not quite to halftime yet on the offense. 3 really poor efforts getting beat with his man making the tackle or disrupting the play. And this is before the half, where it's the second half where he has one play that gets blown up and then immediately gets a penalty called on him after that. So I don't know why Ethan didn't play, but that was kind of suspicious to me because he had been getting better. And it felt to me like he was going to start eating more into those snaps, not less. And he had none. But I was also really excited to see the All-22 for CJ Donaldson's short yardage play on the first possession of the game. 4th and 1, you go to CJ Donaldson. Of course, we go back to the Ohio game and a similar situation from the 2-yard line, 1.5-yard line, where CJ Donaldson meets the Ohio safety, Adonis Williams, in the hole and doesn't get low enough. And because of that, the safety, low man wins, leverage wins, puts him on his back. And CJ meets this guy in the hole in the Washington game. Same scenario, 4th and 1, and he does not get the first down and talks later on in the game that he needs to work on getting his pad level lower. He continually works on that. And I said that yesterday, and some people were like, I thought he meant like 2 or 3 guys in that hole, and it was more on the offensive line. And that's not the case. I wanted to show this screenshot here. This is what that looked like when CJ was heading towards the hole. Right there, you can see he's going to meet number 17 in the hole. And here are the two of them meeting one-on-one, mano-a-mano, our 230-pound back who is in there specifically for short yardage situations. This play's blocked up. That's his man. It's his duty to beat that one guy for that 1 yard, and he didn't do it. And, the fact that he's talking again about getting his pads lower is just like, you've been a running back for 3 years in college football. I don't know how this is still a thing, but I was on Buckeye Huddle Primetime last night. I had Tony on with me, 8 o'clock on Monday and Wednesday. We're over there on the Buckeye Huddle channel for Buckeye Huddle Primetime Live. Stop by and join us. And Tony Gerdeman joined me, and we were talking about his experience out at Washington, the game, and everything else. And he brought up, surprisingly, Tony's very conservative, right? Like very like freshman playing freshman kind of stuff. Like he's like, whoa. Always that's just kind of his attitude with things. Let's ease it in here. He brought up Isaiah West, which was music to my ears. Obviously, if you've been listening to this show, you know my feelings on Isaiah West. I think he's the second best running back on this roster right now. And I think that he would be doing a much better job if you were going to bring a back in specifically for short yardage situations. He's a physical dog. And I've said since he came to Ohio State, he's going to be a fan favorite for his running style, which is bringing the pain, and Carlos Loughlin's favorite running style. So I would absolutely love it. We got to see that. And it was pretty funny that Tony brought that up. Also yesterday, I was on the Doug and Bill show with Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. If you want to go check that out, I think that aired last night. The 2025 Ohio State defense has the potential to be a historically great Ohio State defense. Coming into this 2025 season, coming off of such a great defense in 2024, under defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, who was, widely considered a top 3 defensive coordinator in the country at that time, still is now. You lose all these guys to the NFL. You turn over so much of this defensive roster. But despite that, I was pretty confident in Matt Patricia. I was pretty confident that you were going to upgrade in 2 areas on this defense. I thought you would upgrade in the secondary. I thought that Caleb, 1 year older, better, more mature, would be an upgrade. Caleb, IGB, eliminate some of the penalties, and that's an upgraded IGB. And I thought that you would have an upgrade at corner with Jermaine Matthews coming in for Denzel Burke. I just think Jermaine's a better cover corner. I think he's got a nastier attitude. I love him. And I think that's played out. I think Lorenzo Styles was a clear downgrade from Jordan Hancock. However, Jalen McClain and Lathan Ransom was going to be kind of a wash, in my opinion. And I think that's all kind of played out true right about that, except for Jalen McClain, who at this point feels like it's going to be an upgrade. Maybe you might not say that right now, but the way it's trending, by the end of the season, come playoff time, that's going to be a better safety, I think. So when we look at the entire unit, the secondary, it's elevated from 2024. When we look at linebacker, Cody Simon was my favorite player on the 2024 Buckeyes. Much as I loved him, Arvell Reese is the best linebacker in the country, which means you got the best linebacker in the country, and you got Sonny Styles, a year older and a year better, and he really has improved quite a bit, which means definitively you have a better linebacker room, which I think most of us thought was coming. The defensive line was the only area that I thought you'd take a step back. And the question for me was, how much do you take a step back? Obviously, you had depth concerns as well as the starting lineup probably, not being quite as productive. But when we look at replacing Tyleek for Edric Houston, a downgrade, but Edric Houston certainly, to me, and look, I'm guilty of this, and Tony and I talked about this on Buckeye Huddle. Edric didn't really show us any reason to have as much faith, I think, as a lot of us had in him, that he would get it this year, that he would just come out swinging and being that kind of dog. But I certainly had that kind of faith in him, mainly because we've just seen this story play out so many times with a guy that's as talented as Edric, as smart as Edric, that everybody loves like Edric. And we've just seen it work out really good, really fast. It's not there yet with Edric. So that, pretty big gap between Tyleek and the 3 techs, because then you can, Ty Malone's in there now. Obviously, it's a massive gap. It's a massive gap at 3 tech. But Ty Hamilton for Caden McDonald, that to me felt like an upgrade, and it's been a big upgrade. Ty Hamilton was excellent, but totally different player. K-Mac just might be the best 1 tech in the country right now. Jack for Kenyatta. That one I was kind of up in the air on. Obviously, Jack, a lot more experience. I figured when Kenyatta got in, the way he closed the season, that he would pretty much make up that gap really quick. And then on the other side, JT for either, some combination of Bo Atkinson, Caden Curry, I thought was a definitive downgrade. How do you feel about all that now? It seems to me like Caden Curry right now is an upgrade from everybody on that defensive line last year. It seems to me at the college level, right? It seems to me that Caden McDonald is an upgrade from any of those interior linemen to me. And we had this conversation on the Buckeye Huddle board. Would you take K-Mac the 1 tech if you were building a team? K-Mac the 1 tech or Tyleek the 3 tech? Like, so you're building a roster. Obviously, they play different positions, but you can only pick one. Who you picking? For me, it's K-Mac. And it's K-Mac because the 1 tech, to me, having a dominant 1 tech it's just more difficult to acquire one of those than a dominant 3 tech. So positional value, to me, that's more. And in addition to that, we didn't know about K-Mac's motor playing extended snaps. What we did know was there were times when Tyleek's motor either failed him, or the more cynical folks would say he took some plays off. There's been absolutely none of that with Caden McDonald. And as productive as he's been, in addition to that, when we go all the way back to Penn State last year, he's the one common denominator in all these excellent goal line stands we've seen. So I'm taking K-Mac to start. That's for sure. Like, it's a hands down decision. I've come to my conclusion here. K-Mac is the guy I'm starting it with. Kenyatta Jackson this year so far, he got a concussion in the second half against Texas. Didn't play much against Grambling. He ended up starting, but didn't play a ton. Against Ohio, he had a solid game, not nothing that stood out. And then against Washington, he had a really good game. He had a sack. He had, I think, 1 TFL, 1 solo tackle, and that's pretty good for an end. It doesn't measure up to what K-Mac and Caden Curry did, but their games were just insane. And they ate it all. They ate everything. They left KJ nothing. But what did Kenyatta show us last year in the playoffs? I think that he is definitely gobs and gobs better than he was earlier in the season last year. And I think we'll continue to see that. We haven't seen it quite yet. But remember, he was also playing with that big brace on his knee, and he's going to continue to get better. So your only issue on this defensive line right now is the Edric, Ty Malone 3 tech spot. We haven't seen as much Jarquez Carter as I would have hoped to see by this point in the season. He's played 30 snaps right now. Obviously, Jason Moore has been hurt. I don't expect to see any of Jason Moore when he's not hurt. He wasn't on the availability report last week, which means he was able to play according to their report. Did they hold him out or not? Don't know. Will he get a shot? I suspect he might, because Ty Malone hasn't played bad, but it hasn't been, nothing great. He's trying his best, he's getting better. But what are they going to do at 3 tech? I don't know. But why not give a shot with Will Smith? Because Will Smith right now is without a doubt playing the second best minutes and snaps in the interior of the defensive line. And I was a doubter on this one. Did not believe it. Thought it was just, we're blowing smoke because there's nobody else behind K-Mac. So it's got to be him. He's got to come in big. So we're going to pump him up. We've seen that from time to time. It was no joke. Will Smith has made the leap that everybody said he was making. Josh Padilla, Sonny Styles, a couple other people mentioned him by name, that he was taking a big leap, and he has. He looks really, really good. But remember, he moved from 3 tech to 1 tech, so he's technically Caden's backup. But he knows how to play 3 tech, and we're watching like Bo Atkinson and Caden Curry come in from the end and play 3 tech. Why can't we see Caden and Will Smith Jr. on the field at the same time? I think that's the best combo. And I would love to see those two on the interior at the same time. And I think if we saw those two on the inside with Curry and Kenyatta on the outside, this defensive line is now like, this is a great 4-man unit. So that's my thoughts on the defensive line. But like in totality, I don't think there's been much of a drop off. I don't think there's been much of a drop off on the D line at all, nor from the backers, nor from the secondary. And when we look at the entire unit, it's faster. And I think it plays with more edge to it. Watching Matt Patricia and everything he's got these guys doing, just it looks like they're having fun. They're intimidating people. They're playing with edge. It looks like if you are a defender, like this is the kind of defense you want to play in. And they all look like they're just loving it. I was hoping for it. I was hoping this is what we would see out of Patricia. I didn't think he was coming in to run the Knowles defense, which is now just called the Ohio State defense, is what we were told. Oh, a couple tweaks here and there for Patricia. I wasn't buying it. The way things were going so well, and the way we know this guy, he knows everything. I just thought they would slowly see more and more from him. And by the time we saw it on the field, it wouldn't look too similar. It doesn't look anything similar. Like this is an odd front defense. They're playing that 5-man diamond front, almost like a base look. The 3-man front, like it's very dissimilar to what it was last year. And it is way more fun. It's way more confusing. And I can't remember a game that was as much fun to watch defensively as that Washington game we just watched. Tennessee last year was pretty doggone fun. Oregon was pretty doggone fun. The stakes were obviously massive, but just as far as like just pure domination against a team that you respect, that you came in thinking this team might score 24 points on Ohio State and I'll be okay with that. That's what I was thinking. I predicted 17, but I felt like I was really going out on a limb there saying 17. That team had scored on 22 consecutive series. They were lighting everybody up, 59 points, 2 games straight. And yeah, the opposition wasn't great, but they did exactly what they're supposed to do against bad opposition. They scored every time they got the ball. That was a little intimidating. So I wasn't sure. And what these guys did to them just totally embarrassed that Washington unit. I mean, absolutely humiliated them. That offense is dynamic. And I think when you can shut down a running quarterback like that, a guy that's that explosive, like what can you do to everybody else on this schedule? What can you do to Penn State? What can you do to Michigan? Even Oregon. We just watched Penn State hold Oregon to 17 points in regulation. And I don't think that Penn State defense is better than Ohio State's defense. So what we're seeing right now feels like something's shaping up to be pretty historical at Ohio State. 5.5 points a game. Last year's team gave up over 10. Now, what do you got left on the schedule? In the regular season, it was about 11 points a game last year. Let's just run down where Ohio State sits right now in some of the metrics. So they're number 1 in points per game allowed, 5.5 points a game. They're number 1 in opponent adjusted points per play. They're number 1 in red zone defense. They're number 1 in opponent adjusted explosive plays. They're number 1 in opponent adjusted touchdown rate. They're number 1 in opponent adjusted average yards per play. They're number 6 in total opponent yards. They're number 7 in pass defense. They're number 8 in total sacks, and they are number 19 in rush defense. We'd love to see the rush defense pick up. But the bottom line is the first stat, the 5.5 points a game. And they've done it so far to the best team in the MAC, a top 10 team in Texas, and a team in Washington that I really think is just going to continue to go out the rest of the year and score a boatload of points. Washington still averaging after that game 460 yards a game, 36 points a game. Texas is averaging 32 points a game, 440 yards. Ohio 29 and 420, all considerably higher than when they played the Buckeyes. And the next 3 opponents on deck, Minnesota, they're averaging 400 yards a game, 33 points. Cal held them to 14. Illinois, 376 yards and 36 points. Indiana held them to 10. Wisconsin, they're only averaging 21 points a game, 300 yards. They might, that if we could shut them out in Camp Randall, that would be so awesome. Then you got Penn State. We saw what Oregon did to them. They couldn't score all night long until the very end. They scored a couple touchdowns. I don't like their matchup against the Ohio State defense. I mean, I do. I love it. I don't like it for them. Then Purdue, UCLA's ridiculous defense held Purdue to 17 points. Then UCLA, New Mexico held them to 10 points. Northwestern, I think they scored 14 points a couple times this year. And Rutgers, like that's the schedule until you get to the game. Now, Rutgers has actually scored. They've put up 30 points several times this year against Norfolk State and such. But when we look at the rest of this schedule, last year, 10.9 points a game for the 2024 defense. This year's team, the way this is lining up, the way they're playing, the chemistry they have, barring any injury, I think this is going to be a historically great Ohio State defense. And the points per game might just, I don't know what the all-time points per game record is for the Buckeyes, but this feels like something special. And Matt Patricia, he is just so much more. This guy, when it comes to game planning and X's and O's, so much different coming from the NFL, where you don't have the talent advantage and you've just got to beat people with your brain, with your game plan. And he knows how to do everything. He is leaps and bounds better than Jim Knowles. And the funniest part is the Penn State folks felt like they really got one over on Ohio State, man. They really did. And now they're sitting here after coming in thinking they were going to go to the national championship. There's a real chance that they lose to Ohio State and then have to beat Indiana at Penn State just to get into the playoffs. In that game, Indiana going into Penn State, with Penn State having a playoff game, a playoff berth on the line, they got to win it or they're out after all this build up this season for them. That would be really exciting. So I'm kind of hoping for that. Obviously, all that needs to happen from then to now is Ohio State needs to beat them in Columbus, which, it's always a tough game. I don't want to take it for granted, so I'm not going to say anything about it yet, but I think it's a good matchup for the Buckeyes. But after we like the show and subscribe if we haven't yet, that'd be awesome. Thanks, guys. I want to hit on a little recruiting. So Corbin Fordham, the tight end in this Ohio State class of 2026, committed to the Buckeyes back in November. He's from the Bulls School in Jacksonville. His teammate, Simeon Caldwell, a safety who will probably be a converted linebacker, later on committed to Matt Guerrieri. That's Tim Walton's nephew. So that's the two-man crew from Jacksonville Bulls. Corbin is 6'3". He's listed at 215, but he's actually now up to 227. He told my buddy Mark Givler over at Buckeye Huddle, who was just down there visiting him and some other Florida recruits, watching some games 3 weekends ago. So Corbin Fordham, a 3-star tight end, the number 548 overall player, number 34 player in the state of Florida, and number 34 tight end, number 72 player in Florida. Ever since he committed to Ohio State, he has been Buckeye all the way. Talks about Keenan Bailey, good buddies with Nate Roberts already, and never once did I consider, if you'd have said pick 10 guys you think might potentially be a flip risk in this class, he wouldn't have been on my top 10 list. If you'd have said pick one from out of state that you are positive will be a Buckeye, he might have been the one. And then, out of the blue, Florida State, which is his dad's alma mater, his dad played tight end at Florida State. They've been recruiting him. They've never stopped. And Monday, you get a couple of guys, recruiting guys from On3, who just suddenly leak out of the blue RPMs for Corbin Fordham to flip to Florida State. In addition to that, they say he's going to be on campus for the Miami-Florida State game this weekend. And a quote from Steve Wiltfong, the pull of being a legacy and exciting off-field opportunities and a blazing start in 2025 this season have Coach Mike Norvell and his staff in a really good spot with the tight end target. Now, whenever you hear the exciting opportunities, you know exactly what that means. I can tell you one thing for sure. Corbin Fordham isn't getting those kind of exciting opportunities at Ohio State. And if he wants to flip from Ohio State, whatever, man. I'm like, this is a guy who's watching Ohio State play 50%, 12 and 13 personnel. Just watch Nate Roberts walk in as a freshman, and he's a big part of the offense. Brody Lennon walk in as a freshman, and he's already passed up Max LeBlanc on the depth chart. Meritocracy all the way going on in that tight end room. And if he doesn't want to be a part of that, okay. I mean, hey, this is not going to be anything that I'm going to stress about if he flips out of the class. This is a prospect that, in my opinion, it was just like, okay, he's a 3-star kid, not very highly rated. His film isn't spectacular. I just trust Keenan. He knows what he wants. And so far, I think he's earned that kind of trust, as we've never seen the tight ends or the tight end room be not only so heavily involved, but be so, I mean, they contribute in so many different ways. And Keenan's just a dog, man. I just trust him implicitly right now with that. So this one is a big old shoulder shrug to me if he ends up flipping. The guy ranked ahead of him is committed to Kentucky, behind him, Arizona State. Like, this is no sweat whatsoever. And I don't want to downplay him. I'm just saying, like, it never was anything to me other than Keenan likes him. Now, opportunities for a couple of guys in Ohio, not too many anymore. Braden Fogel for Mansfield, Ohio State was never interested in. He ended up committing to Georgia. That's a 4-star top 100 player. That just seemed weird that Ohio State didn't want him. I did hear that a lot of people thought that he was more into basketball than football. Additionally, maybe he had some, I don't know, he was growing up, maybe a little chip on his shoulder as a 17-year-old or something, and that might have pushed him away. You also got Lincoln Keys, who is going to Georgia. That was another Ohio State tight end target. Preston Frazell out of Toledo Central Catholic, really good tight end who is a top 300 player in the class, committed to Notre Dame. And that would have been the guy, I think, if Ohio State was going to get on one of the local kids to get. But remember last week, we did talk about a potential flip target at tight end, Nick Latour from Lebanon, Ohio, who is bigger than Corbin Fordham at 6'5", 230, and committed to Louisville. He went, he visited, doesn't have an offer. I thought that maybe he might get that offer anyway. Now with this news, certainly sounds like there might be some potential. However, even if that doesn't happen, you don't get a tight end in this class, next year is like the year of the tight end. You got Brock Williams, who's the number 1 tight end prospect in the class that, Georgia, Ohio State are his leaders right now. Great relationship with Brady Edmonds, with Key, with Nate Roberts. And there's a really good chance that comes down to off-field opportunities. So we'll see what happens there. Then you got Jackson Dollar out of North Carolina, who is a 4-star top 100 kid now, and he is the nephew of our dude Rome, who's one of our JUCK'Eyes. I've followed his recruitment throughout. The kid is sick. It's pretty wild, like watching. So this is a listener, right? Guy watches the show, been involved with the show, and talked to me about this nephew of his a year ago. And then, he's a 3-star and oh, wait, he's a 4-star. Well, holy crap. This kid's a top 100 kid. He's got offers from everywhere now. James Laurinaitis is down there visiting him. So that's been pretty cool to watch, but I would really love for that to happen. That kid's a dynamic athlete. And then you've also got the in-staters with D'Angelo White, who is a 6'5", 235-pounder, kind of like Jelani Thurman type of athlete out of St. Joe's in Cleveland, top 300 kid. JT Garassi out of Jersey, Anthony Cartwright out of Michigan, Jordan Karhoff that's RJ Day's tight end in high school, and he's got a Buckeye offer. He's now a 4-star. So tight ends abound, and no shortage of kids want to come to Ohio State and play tight end now, as we are seeing just the other day, out of 62 offensive snaps, there were like 120 tight end snaps in that game. Now, does it feel a little disrespectful for a kid to flip out of Ohio State to Florida State, a team that went 2-10 last year? It does, but off-field opportunities are exciting indeed. Anyway, friends, that'll do it for us today. I do appreciate you joining me. Check me out tomorrow in the evening, Wednesday night, Buckeye Huddle primetime at 8 p.m. But we will also talk tomorrow about these college football nerds, I want to know if what they're saying has some validity to it. They are talking about Ohio State's offense, about Julian saying, about the deep ball. They're very skeptical. I got to go digging through some numbers and see if what they're saying is right. And then I will present their argument to you guys about what they're saying about Julian saying and the deep ball. I think it's a strength of his. They disagree, but before I just pop off, I want to take their argument in and go fact check it, make sure what they're saying is correct. And we will talk about that tomorrow, along with plenty of other things. I appreciate y'all so much. Have a fantastic Tuesday. Juck 'em Bucks out.